Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel. This is Business Connections Live with Steve Hyland.
Hello there, welcome along. It is Business Connections Live, the program for entrepreneurs, SMEs and business owners. And it's great to have your company as always. We're live on all channels at the moment. If you do have a comment or you want to subscribe to the channel, then please do get involved. We're here to give you business advice for your organization, for your business, for your solopreneurship, whatever you're doing at the moment. We're here just to give you a bit of an insight. Now, over the weeks, we've looked at everything from social media all the way through to leadership skills. Today, we go back to an old subject that we've talked about a few times. Of course, with Brexit and actually the transition, the end of transition happening at the beginning of next year, and then a brand new exciting beginning. We're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking as well about the US Privacy Shield. What in the world is that all about then? And does it affect and will it impact on your business? Well, we're going to let you find out all today. It's great to have you with us. My guest of today's show is Linda Bazant. Linda, hello there. Lovely to have you with us today. Thank you very much for joining us today. And
hello, Steve.
It's going to be an interesting old show today, actually, isn't it? Because whenever you come on the program, we tend to talk about Brexit, or at least we did. Then we're talking about transition, and now we're also talking and kind of going back, because in the early days we used to talk about GDPR quite a bit, didn't we? And we're now talking about the US Privacy Shield. Before we get into it, Lynn, for those people that don't know who you are, what you do, can you just give me a quick synopsis of what your background is and what you're all about?
I'm Linda Bazant. I'm a barrister and I'm also a transition consultant. I've been dealing quite extensively with GDPR over the past couple of years, but of course there's an awful lot more to transition than just GDPR with regard to contracts, export, import, that sort of thing. So I'm advising my clients at the moment how to get ready for transition when everything kicks off on the 1st of January 2021.
When we were talking about GDPR a little while back, there was a lot of fuss about it. Lots of people were getting really their knickers in a twist about the whole thing. And then it seemed to come and go, and it didn't seem to have any real impact on anybody's lives. I know there's been pieces in the press over the last couple of months where people have been fined because they've had data breaches. Did GDPR have the impact that you were expecting it to have?
I think the problem with the GDPR enforcement was an issue with regard to the fact that there weren't enough people to actually do the enforcement. Of course, we have in this country the Information Commissioner's Office, but there are only X number of staff at the Information Commissioner's Office to be able to deal with the complaints. And of course, once GDPR came into force on the 25th of May 2018, a lot of the complaints that the ICO had was with regard to GDPR issues that were relating to the old Act up to the 1998 Act. So, of course, it's taken a while for the new Act to come into force, for people to make complaints about the way that their data has been handled. But you are starting to see some really big fines coming out from the Information Commissioner's Office for breach of data protection rules.
Has it affected any small companies at all, or is it all large multinationals?
No, it's not just large multinationals. It's affected some small companies. For example, there was a company that was using CCTV to monitor the outside of their building, and they had been told by the ICO several times that they needed a notice outside to say that they were monitoring and to be able to give the opportunity to the people that they were filming, who they needed to talk to about looking at what they had been filming if it affected them personally. They didn't put up the sign and they were fined £20,000.
Blimey, so it has actually got some teeth to it then, the Act.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes.
I've seen in the paper just recently, actually I saw in the paper this morning that the head of the Information Commissioner's office, she's been working from home in Canada. I mean, so come back, we need you here. Let's talk a little bit about the Privacy Shield, the US Privacy Shield. There's been a lot going on about that, and I'm just wondering how that's going to affect businesses here in the UK. First of all, what is the US Privacy Shield? Is that their equivalent to GDPR?
No, not exactly. The US Privacy Shield was set up to replace what we originally had that was called Safe Harbor, which was an agreement between the EU and the US about the way that they treated EU citizens' data in the United States. Somebody made a complaint about it and said that there were loopholes within it, and it was replaced by the US Privacy Shield. However, another loophole was found in as much as data that is being transferred to the United States from EU UK citizens could possibly be intercepted by the NSA, which is the US government's intelligence service, and they can just ask for the data. Yes, they have to sometimes go through court procedures and so on, but if they're using security as the reason for the request of the data, they can just request the data and the US companies feel obliged to hand it over. Well, that is not the way that it was envisaged with regard to EU and UK citizens' data. And the other problem is that if that does happen, we do not have the right to question it. We don't have the right to make representations to the US court about the fact that our data has been accessed by their intelligence service. So the EU court on the 16th of July this year decided that US Privacy Shield was invalid. And what that means is that any company in the EU and the UK that is transferring personal data of EU and UK citizens to the United States companies using Privacy Shield as a justification had to stop immediately.
So there was no time scale. There was no, by the way, this is going to happen. Do something slightly different. It was overnight, a click of the fingers, and that's it. You're breaking the law.
And it was. And unlike Safe Harbor, when they struck down Safe Harbor, there was a period of time that everyone could get all their ducks in a row, get everything in order. But this time they have not allowed a transition period at all. And it became the law on the 16th of July. You do not transfer EU and US citizens' data to the US if they are members of the Privacy Shield.
All right. Well, I was going to say to you, so what happens then to people like Amazon? Think about that question for a second. Let's just say hi to a few people who are joining us on today's program. Hello there to Tim Coe. Good afternoon, Steve. Good afternoon to you, Tim. It's lovely to have you with us on the Program of the Day. Look, spread the word, go down the street, bang on doors, let people know Lynn's on the air, and she's going to sort all sorts of different things out for different people. Here's a man I'm expecting some questions from a little bit later on. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Antonio Falco, the sales director. We were toying about having Antonio on the program as well today, but he phoned me up earlier on. He said, listen, I don't need to shave today, so we'll just give that a bit of a miss. Great. Love it. That's the whole power of working from home. Let's go back to that question I was saying. We deal, whether we know it or not, with a lot of American companies, the Amazons of the world. There are a lot of people who will put their own GUI front ends on for data storage, where we store our videos. I would imagine, YouTube. We've got Wistia out there. We've got Vimeo out there. All of these are going to be American servers once again. It seems that the problem is that the American government, the NSA, they can ask for it at any stage or any time, saying it's a security issue and they can have access to that data. Surely, can't our own government do that as well?
The issue that we have here, actually, I'd like to clarify something just before I answer that question. It doesn't mean that you can no longer transfer data to the United States. There are mechanisms in place called standard contract clauses, and they can be used now to transfer data to the United States. And what you will find is the likes of Google and Facebook and Amazon have put that in their privacy notice now, that they are dealing with the privacy of EU and UK citizens' data under GDPR rules using those contract clauses, and they built it into their terms and conditions. But also what you will find is with those bigger companies, when the NSA come to them and say, we want your data, those companies can quite often say, we're not handing it over. And it can cause problems. But what they're saying is, we have a duty of care to the people that we've collected the data from. We need to know why you need it. So we're not just going to hand it over. So they might stand back and have an argument with the government about it. However, a lot of smaller American companies, even if they tell you that they wouldn't hand it over, are actually in a position where they would be uncomfortable not handing it over. So you have to be aware of that. But there are standard contractual clauses that allow you to transfer data to the United States in place of Privacy Shield. But you need to make sure that they have actually incorporated those into their terms and conditions.
All right. A very interesting situation that's going on at the moment then. So do you think from your experience from I know that you run surgeries and triages and things like that, and people will phone you up and you'll give them a bit of an oversight of what's actually going on. Do you think companies are aware of all of this, or is this all happening in the ether at the moment and businesses just aren't really up to speed on this, or are people really getting up to speed and do they understand what's going on?
I think it is an issue. So the Googles and the Amazons and so on in this world, of course, they were up to speed with it because it affected them enormously. So what you're finding is that the EU governments and the UK government are, of course, aware of it. The US government is aware of it. But smaller businesses probably have no idea that this is happening. And the only way that they can find out that this is happening, of course, is to keep an eye on the news, but also if they're members of their local chambers of commerce, any of those organizations that look after small businesses, they should have informed you that this was happening. And the other issue that you have is if you are a small business, transfers personal data to a third-party supplier, not necessarily in the States, but that third-party supplier deals with the United States and they forward the data on, you need to make sure that they're aware of Privacy Shield and they are aware that this ruling has happened, because you could have a problem transferring the data to a third-party supplier who in turn transfers the data to the US without having all of the proper mechanisms in place.
Realistically, Lynn, what kind of problems can this cause? I mean, it's all very well that we look at the processes that we're going down here, but realistically, for a business, what kind of issues can arise from this? I mean, could it mean that they could get slapped on by a fine from the States if they weren't aware, or from the EU? I mean, who is the regulatory authority on this? Who are you going to get in trouble with?
Okay. If you're in the UK, you will get in trouble with the Information Commissioner's Office. If you're in the EU, they have their own Information Commissioner's Office. They're called the supervisory authorities. So they could also come after you if you are dealing with EU citizens' data that you are also sending over to the United States, and you have not put in place the appropriate mechanisms to protect that data in light of the fact that the Privacy Shield is no longer valid. And with that in mind, of course, the fines can be enormous. So 4 times global annual turnover, for example. And so you would have seen British Airways were recently fined around about £200 million for a data breach. So this focuses the mind. Of course, what the Information Commissioner's Office will do, especially with smaller businesses, if you have made a genuine mistake, they will contact you, they will talk you through it. Yes, you'll get a slap on the wrist, but they will ask you to fix the problem. And so there won't necessarily be a fine initially, but if you continue, then they will fine you.
Okay, Lynn, Antonia's back on again. He's got a really good question, actually, and let's see if we can bring an answer up. If you're using LinkedIn, for example, third-party supplier, are you covered as a user under their T's and C's that the data in the form of your contacts on LinkedIn form part of their overall T's and C's? I mean, how do we stand on that? I mean, we had a discussion the other day about LinkedIn. I mean, I was going on about some of the rubbish that is going up on it, and somebody told me yesterday, just give them a hug. forget it. It's of no importance. Use it as a Rolodex. But for instance, some people are now republishing TikTok videos onto LinkedIn, and that's got copyright material inside of it. Now, the TikTok T's and C's, I think, say one thing, but if you're acting as a publisher and you're republishing a video that's containing somebody else's copyright material on another platform, you then become the publisher because the platform isn't. So how do you stand amongst all of this? Because it's all a little bit confusing, I think, for everybody to actually truly understand where your responsibility finishes and where the platform that you're using starts, or the supplier that you're using starts. What would be your answer to that? Long question.
It is a huge and difficult problem because nowadays we are all publishers and we also republish, and that is an issue. It is your responsibility, if you are republishing something, to make sure that there is no copyright, I'm afraid, in the long run. Although to be able to catch everybody that is doing this would be virtually impossible. And it's only when the copyright owner makes a complaint that you would actually be in the firing line. But it is your responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen in the first place. Because it's very difficult to know what's copyright and what isn't.
Well, this whole thing, isn't it, is that the platforms are not publishers, are they? The individual is the publisher, and they made absolutely. And this has been the issue with Facebook. It's been the issue with all the other social media platforms. They are not publishers. They are technical platforms that people like you and I take the advantage to publish on. So we are the publishers. A lot of people don't seem to realize as well. I remember working in radio, if somebody made a comment and it would be printed in a newspaper, and as a presenter, I then went, blah-de-blah-de-blah is apparently going out with donkeys or whatever. And then everyone thought the joke was allegedly. You could put that on the end. But actually, even that didn't protect you. You had republished the story. So therefore, you are liable to the consequences. And I honestly do not believe that people who are using social media platforms understand that or care.
No, and as I said, it's a huge problem, and to be able to enforce that with the number of people that are doing it is just virtually impossible. But it doesn't mean that it's legal, because it isn't.
All right, listen, we started off the program talking about transition. So that's a little bit about the UK Privacy Shield. And I know you're going to be doing some talks. Is there more to say?
Sorry, I do. There is more to say on the US Privacy Shield.
Well, in that case, then let me shut up and have more to say then.
Now, I mentioned standard contract clauses, and the reason that Privacy Shield was struck down was because the US government can intercept the personal data of EU and UK citizens. If you were to read the standard contract clauses, there's actually really not an awful lot in there that stops them from doing it either. So it may well be that later on this year, we see another case going to the European Court questioning standard contract clauses to find out whether they protect the EU and UK citizens or not. So although you've got that mechanism at the moment of standard contract clauses, watch this space, because that may be struck down too.
It just gets more and more confusing. Another message now from Tim Coe. Hi, Tim. Good to have you with us. Let's see, the same copywritten song. This is interesting. The same copywritten song can be allowed on YouTube and then muted on Facebook, or the other way around. It is crazy that it just doesn't seem to be a level playing field at the moment out there, does it? There seems to be numerous different rules for all the different platforms, for all the different people that you're dealing with. I mean, I would imagine Amazon, if I was Jeff Bezos, I wouldn't be sleeping at night, or should I be sleeping at night? Or just doesn't he care anymore?
Well, I can't speak for Jeff Bezos, but with regard to copyright on all of those different platforms, of course, they all have their own terms and conditions, and they all expect people to comply with them. And they're all different, which is why you have an issue with one platform publishing and another platform not publishing.
Do you know what, Lynn?
Although they're not publishers.
I think this whole thing actually warrants another program, the whole area of copyright. Antonio, back again. And what was he saying? He's saying if the platforms, there we go, if the platforms are mentioned are not publishers, as they have themselves stated on numerous occasions, why have they recently deplatformed people, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and other sites? Does this not make them a publisher if they are now deciding who can publish and what they can publish. I mean, we've had this with Trump because we're looking at different laws now. The stuff that you are publishing may incite violence or that kind of thing. And of course, Twitter have taken him down and given him warnings. Facebook have done exactly the same thing. So, in your opinion? Now, I know I'm asking a big question. In your opinion, at what stage do you think this is all going to change, and that these people will have to be considered to be actual publishers? What do you think?
Well, they're actually being investigated at the moment as to whether they are publishers or not by the Americans. They're being hauled across the coals about it, which is why you're finding that they are starting to pull things as publishers, because they don't want the government to actually put into law the fact that they consider them to be publishers and they have to behave as publishers. So by voluntarily removing some of these items, they are saying, look, we'll just abide by a code of conduct, but we don't want you to call us publishers. And that's why they're doing it.
So they're doing effectively what the UK press did, where it was a voluntary code of conduct, because they don't want establishment coming in and sticking their fingers into their pies at the moment, I would imagine.
That's exactly it. And of course, the other issue that you have is the likes of Google and Facebook are worth billions. They have got more money than governments. So you can see where they may have an influence over the way that the law may or may not change in the future.
I tell you what we must do. We'll do an entire programme, I think, on this whole area of copyright. I think another comment coming in from Antonio. He says, thank you very much, Antonio, for getting involved on today's show. He promised me that he would, and he has. And thank you also to Tim Coe. If you're watching this at the moment and you're thinking, I'd like to be involved in this, I'd like to have a name check for my business, or I'd like to just share my experiences, then please do get in touch. I think you will find that I think you will find they are publishers when it suits their political agenda. I think it's actually written in the Constitution.
Which is exactly what I just said.
Which is true. Yes, which is true.
Yes.
But it is written, isn't it? It's written in some constitutional document, something that they are not. And until that is changed, it is one line of text that says they are not publishers, and that's the way they are set up. And it's their get out of jail card. So, until they are broken up or the governmental bodies turn around and go, like, we're going to go for you, then, they can pretty much operate as they feel they wish, so it's crazy.
They can operate the way that they see fit. And of course, we've got the issue with regard to digital tax at the moment, because these companies make so much money and pay very little tax in the UK and indeed in the EU. We're looking at the digital tax law, which the US government are stepping in and saying, oh, now if you do that, we might start looking at tariff fear. They are trying very hard to protect those companies from this particular tax.
You can't win, can you? Depending which foot the boot is on, it's a very difficult and tricky situation to be finding ourselves in. Do you know, we will do an entire show, I think, on copyright, because I think a lot of people don't realise it. For instance, the little bit of music that you hear at the beginning of this one, we're telling you all the different things that we as a business do, Business Connections Live do, green screen studio hire, show reels, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. That little bit of music we have bought. We have got the licence for, and we've got permission to use it. Yet, every week, there will be a copyright claim on that piece of music. So do not be thinking that you can go onto these platforms, because there are bots out there and they are looking at the content that you are putting up there. And just be careful. I was talking to Lee Rickler only yesterday, in fact, and he was explaining to me that there are companies because they feel that the internet is the Wild West, and they can go on there, they can find a picture, and when they find the picture, what they can do with the picture, they can just use it willy-nilly. And then a couple of years down the line, what happens is that somebody comes on and goes, actually, that's our picture, and we want recompense for that. And you've heard of that happening as well, haven't you, Lynn? You just got to be careful, because everything that is out there does truly belong to somebody else, doesn't it?
Well, someone's created it. They don't appear out of thin air. Someone's actually spent the time to create them, which is why when you go on to some of these sites that allow you to download graphics, you've actually got to pay them money, because you are paying a license fee to use that particular graphic. And I would say, please beware of any site that says you can download this for free. Some of them are quite genuine, but some of them could get you into an awful lot of trouble. So be careful.
Yes, be careful if you possibly can. It's really worth thinking about. The other thing that we've been talking about, I've been talking to Antonio about, is a lot of the drivel that is put up on LinkedIn at the moment. And I am beginning to lose... I was told, I was bullied on LinkedIn by a couple of people, and I decided actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of them. Have you ever been bullied on LinkedIn? Have you, as a paying customer of LinkedIn, I think I'm entitled to an opinion, but people do ever so much. They do put you down. Hello, Tim. We've woken Tim up. What's he said? When it comes to business and imagery, I'm always recommending clients take their own photos when they can. Tim, great advice. And you know what? I think there was some research done, Tim, that says when you take your own photos, because they are more authentic and they relate more to what the person is talking about, that is the right way of doing it. So what a great idea. And it's going to be different. Nobody else is going to be using it. And if we see the little men again, those little white men that are everywhere with their pointers, and there's a whole troop of them, the same old pictures are turned around all the time. It's very tempting because it's easy. And it was interesting. We had a discussion, didn't we, Lynn, about the picture that we used on one of your press releases concerning the Privacy Shield. Now, that is, and it's where does the copyright, the photographer who took the photograph, he releases that so copyright free, which is very good of him. Fantastic photo. But who owns the imagery of the shield?
Well, he will. The reason that he would have given it copyright free is because the site that he's given it to probably pay him money, and they get their money from advertising on the site.
Yeah, Tim comes back and says also the pictures that you take are unique, and that's what's important about it. It gives It gives what you're doing a little bit uniqueness. By the way, what Tim does, Tim makes videos for people as well. Tim, will get you on the show, I think, in the near future as well, and you can have a chat, because I think Tim's got a very unique approach to marketeering, and I'd love to have Tim on the show. He can talk for England, so we'll get you on the show in the near future, Tim. That would be absolutely fantastic. Okay, where are we? Let's look at the time. All right, I think it's time to just go back a week, if I may be so bold. More from you in just a second, Lynn. Thank you very much indeed. You can have a swig of water. This is ironic, actually. Should we just explain the setup that's going on here? So I'm in our Studio B, which is remote from our normal studio, and Linda is actually at our main studio in West London, and she's sitting there on her own in a great big green screen studio, aren't you? Because
lots of cameras pointing at me, and none of them are actually
and you've got a laptop in front of you, and I think that is the most bizarre thing. Another comment from Antonio as well just come in. What's he say? But there are sites that you can go to for images, as Tim will tell you. Yes, Unsplash is one site you can go to if you're looking for images that you want to do. And Tim has confirmed. He says, thanks, Steve. I look forward to it, Tim. I will give you a call. I think we've only ever spoken once, but we will catch up over the next couple of days, and we'll get you on the show. I think that would be a fantastic program, because you've got quite a unique approach, I think, to the way that you do marketing for small to medium scale business, even large businesses for that sake. In fact, we've met some real mavericks, I think, over the last couple of months, who, when they've come on the program, just talked the way it should be talked. And I think that's been great. Right, I will come back to you, Lynn, in a few moments' time. So Linda Bazant, my guest on today's show. Still to come, we're going to be talking about imports and exports, how to take goods out of the UK temporarily, and what will change on the 1st of January 2021 for business travellers to Europe, and how insurance cover will change. We've still got that to come on this edition of the programme. And yes, Antonio, I know Timco does great stuff. So we thank you very much for the endorsement of that. Absolutely excellent. You're watching Business Connections Live. Last week we were talking about networking. We had Stephen Thomas on the program. It was a great show. He was explaining how both online and offline networking really is an important aspect of your business. If you're not doing it, then you should be. But what are the key things you need to remember when it comes to doing online networking to grow your business through COVID-19. Great show last week. If you missed it, I do suggest you go back and watch the entire program. It's an hour well spent, but just to give you the key takeaways, here's Stephen Thomas.
I'm Stephen Thomas. I'm the author of Business Networking for Dummies. Let's make sure that people can see that on the screen. We've been talking about networking and specifically online networking. If you haven't attended an online networking event yet and you're running your own business, now is absolutely the time to get stuck in. It's much more accessible than it was in real life to get to a networking event. It's typically less expensive as well to get to a networking event right now, and you will build really useful contacts and potentially customers for your business as well. Get along to a networking event, and when you go, spend time getting to know the other people in the room. Make sure that you've got a 40 or 60 second pitch ready to go. I call it an introduction. Other people like to call it a pitch, so you'll know what I'm talking about. Earlier in this program, we talked about how to structure it. When you're there, a couple of really specific things. Make sure you're talking to the camera. And not looking at the other people in the room, because then it looks like you're looking away. And also, if you've got the opportunity to put your details in the chat box, if you're using Zoom or the chat box on other platforms, my big tip is have it already written and ready to go so that you can just copy and paste it to save you having to type away during the networking event yourself. Have a pen and a piece of paper to write down the names of the people that you speak to so that you remember to connect with them afterwards and continue the conversation. Every big opportunity starts with a little conversation. The networking event is just the start of the conversation. Make sure that you continue the conversation afterwards. I really hope that's helpful.
Fantastic program last week. Stephen Thomas on this edition, or last week's edition of Business Connections Live. And my thanks to Stephen for joining me there. It's great to have your company today. Here we are. I hope you're having a really good day. Isn't it nice that it's cooled down a teeny weeny bit? I must admit, I'm finding it a lot more enjoyable. Now, if you'd like to get in touch with us, maybe to be on the program, we are going back to the studio in the near future. But if you'd like to be part of the program, maybe to tell us what your business does, give us your advice, share it with our viewers, then you can get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live. It's very easy to do that. All you got to do is drop us an email to this address. It is studio@businessconnectionslive.com, or you can pick the phone up and give us a call on 01784 256 777. You can follow our stream of consciousness, and that's on Twitter, of course, at BCL Business TV. And if you're watching on Twitter at the moment, well, why don't you leave a comment today or ask us a question, because that's what this is all about. It's about sharing information with you. If you are a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, large business owner, and you just want to share some information, or you want to get the answer to some information, then please do get in touch with us here. Of course, the best place to go for over 400 hours of great business advice is at businessconnectionslive.com. Just go along to our website and everything shall be revealed there. We've got everything from financing, being a non-exec director, social media, sales, marketing, video integration into your marketing mix. What else have we? Leadership skills. It's everything is on that site. So I do suggest you go along to businessconnectionslive.com. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company. My guest on today's show is Linda Bazant. We're talking about all things that are going to be changing at the end of last year. We got kind of waylaid there just for a little while when it came to the US Privacy Shield, and then we drifted into copyright. And Linda said she will come back and do an entire program on copyright in the future. Transition is where we're going to go now. We're beginning to see the ads on the TV, hopefully not too late, but we are beginning to see the ads on the TV. What should transition be meaning to a business owner in the UK at the moment? Here we are, we're mid-August. What should transition be meaning to them?
Well, as far as business owners in the UK are concerned, if they export to and import from the EU, things will change from the 1st of January 2021, and they need to be aware of that. especially with regard to customs declarations. I'm not going to go into a deep dive about all of the different mechanisms and so on. But what I would say is that at the moment, if you take our shippers that we have in the country at the moment, the trucking companies and so forth, they deal with international trade as well as trade that goes to and from the EU. So as far as the international trade is concerned, they know exactly what paperwork is required, how to fill it out, what all of the shipping terms mean, and so on. However, we do an awful lot of trade with the EU. And what that will mean is the shipping companies that are in the UK at the moment that do international trade and EU trade will now have to do the same paperwork and checks for the EU trade that they do for the international trade. Do they know how it works? Yes. Are they going to be able to cope with the influx? That's going to be a huge problem for them, because not only do they have to employ the additional people that they'll need to keep up with the paperwork, they need to upgrade their existing systems to be able to cope with it, because the government are starting to introduce new systems that they will have to comply with to be able to cover the VAT and the duty and so on. So if you think that our shipping companies are suddenly going to have 2/3 more work on the 1st of January than they had on the 31st of December, that's a big ask of them.
But conversely, the same applies to the European shippers as well, isn't it? Because we are a big trade customer of Europe.
Oh, yes.
So I see, what I don't understand is, because of that stance that the EU is taking, let's just be, from where I sit, it just seems sometimes that the EU have just been ever so slightly awkward about this, and that they're using all their negotiating skills to get, as anyone would, to get the best possible deal. But it's the same issue for them too, because we are a big part of their market, 5th largest economy. Surely they want to sell to us, and they must be doing things to try and make it easy for them as well.
Yes, they will do. But then, of course, what you need to remember is the people that are negotiating this are the governments. It's the governments that are negotiating. So it's our government. And when we say the EU, we need to remember there are 27 different countries in the EU who all have a say in the way that the negotiations go. Are they under pressure from the businesses in their own individual countries to just get on with it? Yes, of course they are, as is our UK government, where the UK businesses are saying, can you please just get on with it and stop toing and froing? But they are all, and you said it earlier, trying to get the best deal that they can. And I think what you're going to find is that the negotiations that are going on at the moment, and we're making a little bit of headway, they're going to go right up to the wire, just like they did before with Brexit.
So it's just going to continue. But this one seems to be a low-profile bubbling that's going on. We hear about it, we read about it, but it's not front-page news, is it? And if it does make the front page, it's not there the following day. So I think the general public are just feeling that we're just drifting towards transition.
Yes, and the thing is, we're not drifting. We are not drifting at all. Transition will happen on the 1st of January 2021. It's not going to be delayed. It's not going to be postponed. It's going to happen. And the worry that an awful lot of organisations have, like the CBI, Chambers of Commerce and so on, Federation of Small Business, is that an awful lot of businesses are sitting back and thinking, I'll just wait and see what happens. And I think what you're going to find is come September, October, all of a sudden companies are going to wake up to the fact that there are things that they need to put in place for the 1st of January, and they've had all year to do it, but they're going to leave it until the last minute. So, for example, contracts that they've got with companies in the EU and so on that may have been dealing on EU regulations. They will have agreed shipping terms going back 3 or 4 years on long-term contracts. Well, those shipping terms would have been negligible with regard to cost, but they won't be from the 1st of January. Who picks up the cost? Because all of a sudden we may be trading on WTO terms. Look at another 30% on the cost. Who picks that up?
But the point about it is that it's going to be as bad for if the bad's the right word, it's going to be as bad for us as it's going to be for the exporters who are in Europe. So it's in everybody's interest to make certain that they get this right. But it just seemed that the politicians are just they're playing poker, and the hands that they are playing are those of business owners and entrepreneurs, not only in the UK, but across Europe.
Yes, that's true. But I think you'll probably find, or even though, as I say, they'll take it to the wire, come late November, December, we'll probably start to see something more concrete coming out between both parties, so that we can go into the 1st of January without too many hiccups. But there are going to be some.
All right, then. Okay, let's move on. So that's the first area that we're going to be looking at. What will change, do you reckon, on the 1st for business travellers to Europe? How insurance cover will change? How's that going to affect business travellers, do you think?
Well, as far as business travellers are concerned, there's going to be an issue with regard to how long you can be in the country for when you travel abroad. They're looking at probably 90 days at the moment. The EHIC card, so the health card that we get given as EU citizens, will no longer be valid from midnight on the 31st of December. So we won't be covered by the EHIC, which means that you need to look at your travel insurance to find out whether they cover you for going to EU countries, not just for business, but of course for pleasure as well. And that extends to things like driving in the EU. How are you covered on insurance for that? That will change as well. There is an awful lot on the government website. As you said, Steve, there are a lot of adverts on the television at the moment that the government are putting out, warning everybody or encouraging people to remember that there is transition and there is an awful lot that's changing. And they put a lot of information on their site about not only what things will change, but how they will change and what you need to do to make sure that you're ready.
I mean, up until now, it's been relatively easy. I mean, when we've been involved with doing our international work, when we've been doing shows and exhibitions and conferences abroad in Spain or wherever it is, it's been relatively easy to get the kit out there and to bring it all back again. Is that going to change? Is that going to be a little bit more problematic?
Yes, you're going to be looking at carnets, so you will have to get licenses to temporarily take things out of the country and bring them back in again. And of course, the additional problem in the EU is if you had, so we were talking about Spain just now, if we were doing something in Spain and we had the license to take equipment into Spain, if we suddenly decide that maybe we might do a bit of filming over the border, I don't know, maybe we'd pop into France at some point. If you haven't got the paperwork to be able to go from Spain to France, you can't do it. So if you visit several countries, so let's take for the example of someone that has sold goods into the EU that have a maintenance contract. And the person that maintains them actually comes from the UK, and he goes over with all of the tools and so forth. But it may be that while he's there, he might be there for a while and travel between EU countries, fulfilling the contract to do the maintenance with the customers in different countries. So they've got to make sure that they've got the appropriate license to travel in between those countries and not just to travel from here to the first country they get to.
So who's going to be issuing those kind of licenses? Sorry?
That's cross-border licenses.
So who issues that then?
So that will be HMRC again, with the government. You'll actually.
So there's a lot of pre-planning that's going to take place before you go off and you do anything, actually, before you go anywhere. In your mind's eye, I mean, you're a smart woman. You're a barrister. You research this. You go to a number of meetings about it. You talk to business owners. Do you think are we in with a chance of actually succeeding and actually being in a position where when transition actually comes to an end, we're going to be all right?
Well, given the fact there's only 4 months
I didn't like the
Given the fact that there's only 4 months to go, it's going to be a struggle. It really is going to be a struggle. But I don't want people to put fear into people too much, because, of course, we have always handled in this country any issues with regard to the way that we do business very, very well, regardless of the disruption. We had the disruption of the Brexit vote. We've had the disruption of coronavirus. and everyone has picked up the ball and run with it. It's going to be teething problems. The only problem with this one is that the teething problems may last quite a while people adjust to all of the new rules and regulations. And make sure, so for example, in export and import, getting the paperwork right is going to be key. Very, very important to decide who pays for what VAT is paid, when it's paid, how long before you can declare the VAT, what holidays do you have with regard to that, deferment, if you can defer, can you sign up for deferment, or do you have to go through a shipping company and use their license for deferment, that sort of thing. These are things that companies need to be aware of and to find out before the 1st of January. Will they all know it by the 1st of January? Of course they won't, but they will continue to learn. In actual fact, the government have provided a £50 million fund for training for export-import to allow companies to learn about customs declarations. They will also, some of that fund will also pay for them to employ new staff that will learn about the customs declaration, and they can also claim for any new IT systems that they may need to install to cover the new declarations and so forth that will need to be done. However, it's only 50 million. At the moment, I believe that the 50 million is going out at about 600,000 a week, but that is going to, the game on that is going to up exponentially come September, October, I believe. And once that fund is gone, it's gone.
Do you think we're going to get into a situation with this where there's going to be a lot of people phoning businesses up who really don't understand the consequences of what's going on, but they're going to be trying to sell them solutions, a bit like PPI? But did you realize what's happening in January? Do you think there's going to be a bit of that going on? I know that you talk to companies, and by the way, if companies, if you're running a business and you export to Europe at the moment and you want to find out if you're going to be compliant, I take it they can contact you, Linda, and yes. you'll talk them through it. I don't know, is it a free call or do they pay for it? Probably pay for it. Make them pay for it.
I have a quick initial chat with them to find out exactly what the issues are. And then what we'll do is a clinic, if you will. I did Brexit clinics last year. I'll do transition clinics this year. And if companies want me to actually come in and help them with any issues that they have, then we can talk about that too.
Do you think it's all too little too late, do you think? Because you were saying there that people are sitting waiting to see what's going to happen. And the danger, of course, is it's already happened.
Yes, it has already happened. In actual fact, it happened back in 2016 when we voted to leave. I think an awful lot of businesses stood back then and waited for somebody else to tell them what to do instead of investigating what the consequences might be for their business and sensibly putting contingencies in place for what might happen. And yes, I appreciate that it would cost an awful lot of money, but there are some things that you can do, especially as you've had 3 or 4 years to actually go through it, that you can introduce new ways of working over that period of time. And then, of course, we left the EU effectively in December this year. There's a transition period with regard to agreements and laws and all of that sort of thing. But given the fact that in January we knew we were leaving, you should have actually been making contingency plans immediately. And there's a lot of help out there. So you go to the government websites, you go to your chambers of commerce, you go to the Federation of Small Business. Lots of networking organisations would probably be able to help you and at least point you in the right direction. And they would also have some people in those networking organisations who could help you specifically with some of the problems that you might have.
I suppose the worry that I have is, for instance, where our studio is next door to us, there is she's a solopreneur. She's shipping, so she's importing and then she's shipping out goods for babies, mattresses and things like that. And you just don't feel that she's going to be aware. If she's shipping at the moment, maybe using the likes of Amazon or even eBay, and she's shipping across Europe, she just isn't going to be up to speed on it, is she?
No, probably not. And it wouldn't surprise me if she also isn't a member of any of the organisations that I mentioned earlier. So that's going to be a problem for her but also businesses of that size, as I mentioned earlier, can sometimes use third parties. So it isn't just about you being ready, it's about the third party companies that you use also being ready.
Is this an opportunity then for the shipping companies to actually do a one and done service?
No, they can't. And the reason they can with the best will in the world. And to be fair to them, they will give you all the help that you need. They really will. But as far as filling out the customs declaration is concerned, it is the trader's responsibility to fill it out correctly. So you can get all of the advice in the world from these other parties. But if you fill out that declaration incorrectly, even if you've been given advice on it, it is the trader's responsibility to make sure that the customs declaration is completely accurate. Otherwise, you could either underpay or overpay VAT, and HMRC will come after you. And they won't accept the fact that you were advised by an intermediary. As far as they're concerned, it's your responsibility. And if you've underpaid your VAT, they want it back.
Crikey. So we've got to be careful about this. Do you think the government, in your opinion, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you think the government, in your opinion, have done enough to raise the awareness of what's going on and what's taking place to businesses, or do you think they're being kind of sidestepped because of the COVID-19 issues that we've got at the moment?
Well, given the fact that COVID-19 hit directly after we left the EU and we started transition, it has been a huge issue for the government to try to look after the country and our citizens and also concentrate on Brexit. But you will have seen in the paper over the past month or so that negotiations have started again with the EU, and they are continuing apace. But as to whether they've had enough time to really put the meat on the bones by the end of the year remains to be seen.
And of course, our Japanese trade deal is all stuck at the moment on cheese, isn't it? It's down to the cheese at the moment. So it's nice to see that the priorities are in exactly the right place. Going to ask you about the European Court.
But you say that. Sorry, you say that, and you'd be surprised how many trade agreements can actually stick on one tiny little point that doesn't make sense to us, but is very important to the people that are negotiating.
In just a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about the European Court of Justice and also what rulings that's going to have over us, and also what happens if there is a dispute across the channel. They didn't pay, where do I go? We're going to find out what that's all about in just a few moments' time. Linda Bazant, my guest on today's show. Hope you're finding it useful. If you weren't aware of all of this, it's interesting. The comments have gone quiet, and I think the reason the comments have gone quiet is because I think people are taking notes. And I think that's an important thing about all of this, is that there is a lot of information to take on board. And as Linda said, if you do need any help or advice, then she is somebody that you can go to. You're watching Business Connections Live. Steve Heiler with you here. It's great to have your company. We're live at the moment. We're live on all channels. If you do have a question or you'd like a mention, please do get in touch with us. You can do that simply by just going to the left or the right of the video that you're watching, or below the video, and then you can also leave your comments and ask your questions as well. Relton Heron was on the programme a little while back. He was talking about marketing and why it's so important to market your business, probably even more so these days. But some key advice from Relton. Here he is from a previous edition of Business Connections Live.
My name's Relton from Relton Associates. We do digital marketing and branding, and they obviously bridge together with online brand reputation management. We're more of a consultancy than we are an agency. We just have a lot of people asking us to do it for them. Hopefully the takeaways you've taken today are just your online Google presence can be quite simply rectified. Please make sure you own your website, access to your website, your domain, to all your social media channels. Just make sure you have done the due diligence and you have control over those assets. And we've discussed Amazon, we've discussed social media, we've discussed monitoring social media, and we've discussed how you can influence the people on those channels as well to say positive things about you. But there's loads of really good blogs on my website. Please go and have a look. Hopefully you'll really enjoy some of the reading. Thank you.
Fantastic. And just remind us, the website address is
reltonassociates.co.uk.
Fantastic. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always here today, and I hope you're enjoying today's program. My guest on today's program is Linda Bazant, and we've been talking about all things when it comes. Well, we kicked off with the US Privacy Shield, and then we moved smartly into imports and exports. We're going to be finishing off now, really, by talking about what happens when it comes to jurisdiction. Where does that lie anymore? Have our courts, have our judges lost a little bit of the edge? Are they still as important in Europe as they used to be? Where do I go if there's a dispute about money? Who do I need to talk to? Do I need to call out the Ghostbusters? What is the situation that we're in here with this? Because it just seems to be, there was always this thing in this country, wasn't there, where if a hearing was called for you, you may have to travel from London up to Birmingham to resolve the hearing. Is it going to be something similar now that, depending on the jurisdiction of where the court is, you may have to go to Spain or to Luxembourg or to Germany to resolve a legal issue if it should come up?
Well, why don't I'll read you something that came out of the EU to their member states with regard to judgments handed down by UK courts. Businesses should be aware that judgments handed down by a UK court might no longer be swiftly enforceable in the European Union compared to today's situation.
They're just having a laugh, aren't they?
No. Remember, we wanted to take back control here. We did not want to be governed by the European Court. So if that's the case, then we govern ourselves with regard to the law in the UK. But what that will mean is, it doesn't mean that you still can't get your judgment in the UK court. You can. But to enforce that judgment in the EU after the 1st of January could be an issue. And I'm only saying could because we've still got 4 months of negotiations to go. So they may well come up with an agreement on that. But even they are saying at the moment that enforcement is going to be an issue. So what that would mean here is that in the UK, you could get your judgment at a UK court, but to get that enforced, you may have to go to the court in Germany or France or wherever, put the case to them and say, look, the UK court has given me a judgment. I'd like to enforce it here. And that could end up costing you a lot more time and a lot more money.
Of course, conversely, the same is going to apply to any judgments that they have over there. And as a large trading nation...
Not necessarily.
Oh, really?
We might decide that we will allow their enforcement to happen here. And I think the reason that we're looking at that is so that we can have, that term again, a level playing field. So, we'll look after yours if you look after ours.
Do you think that'll happen then, Lynn? Watch this space.
It makes perfect sense because businesses are in the business of doing business, not running around trying to get judgments and so on, because it's just time consuming, it costs money, and it will cost money on both sides. It makes no sense. But at the moment, that is the position of the European Union.
Are there any key things that we've missed out today? Because it's been a fascinating insight. We talked a lot about copyright, US Privacy Shield. We've done imports and exports. Is there anything that you feel that we've missed from what you wanted to talk about and what you wanted to say today?
I don't think so, because we've only had an hour. We've generalised on an awful lot of things. And of course, everything that I've spoken about, I've really just covered the surface on all of those issues. And there is an awful lot more underneath, which will come out over the next few months. So I think that we've covered everything we can today. But as you said, there could be future programs dealing with one subject. The other thing that I would mention, as we talked about exports and imports, we were talking about export and import of actual physical product. Well, of course, we've also got the problem of people selling online and selling maybe things like software, downloads, that sort of thing. So there is going to be a digital issue with regard to importing and exporting as well. But digital services at the moment, we haven't had clarification on exactly what the law around that is going to be, not thoroughly. So that might be another program that we do.
All right, then. That's really interesting. Listen, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the program. You are going to be doing some training for the Surrey Chamber of Commerce very shortly, aren't you? What are
Yes,
you going to be doing for them? Do let us know, because if anyone's watching this that is a member of Surrey Chamber of Commerce, and let's face it, this is a chamber that's got the most number of headquarters in its county. I mean, this is really something else. What's the training going to be on?
It's going to be on export-import.
And can you give us a bit
So
more
going through
details?
all of the details. So, declarations, rules of origin, tariffs, Incoterms, contracts, all of that, everything that surrounds export-import, the way that you use shipping, HMRC, VAT, duty deferments, anything that is involving export-import from the 1st of January, what the rules and regulations are going to be, how to use them, how to implement them, and where to go for help.
And when's the kickoff date for those?
First one at the moment is mooted as 23rd of September.
Right, so still not giving people a lot of time once they've had the course, but at least they're getting the course, they're getting the knowledge. If before you do your roundup of the hour, if people want to get in touch with you, would you like them to go? They can go to your website, obviously, lindabazant.com, isn't it?
Yes.
I should know this. lindabazant.com. But ideally, the best place to go for an exchange of ideas, I would imagine, is to go to your LinkedIn profile.
Definitely LinkedIn. That's the best place.
All right. Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. I think that's the longest I've seen you in the past 4 months. If you don't mind, would you please give us the key takeaways from today's program, just a brief summary, and then also at the end, how people can contact you and get in touch to get more details, particularly if they want one of these kind of surgeries, if they want a discussion with you to see what kind of roadmap they should lay down ahead of themselves so that they are going to be prepared for this, because it is creeping up. And before we know it, it will have arrived. And,
yes.
Many people will have done very little about it. Actually, last question on that. Do you think it's going to be the same as GDPR was? Do you think there'll be a lot of hype towards it, it'll happen, and then everyone will go, well, what was all the fuss about?
No, it won't be the same as GDPR. And the reason for that is GDPR was a law that was introduced in May 2018 that is on the statute books. Of course, with transition leaving the EU, we have so many laws that need to be readdressed because they are integrated with EU legislation, EU regulations. We're going to have to extract ourselves from that, but that's going to take a very long time to do. So it's nothing like GDPR.
Fantastic. Listen, say who you are, where you're from, and the key takeaways from today's program, please.
I'm Linda Bazant. I'm a barrister and a transition consultant. And what we've been talking about today is transition planning for the 1st of January 2021. We went through imports and exports from UK to the EU, what you need to know about customs declarations, rules of origin, tariffs, Incoterms, commodity codes, World Trade Organization terms, the contract that you have with the person that you are buying or selling the goods with. Have a look at any contracts you've already got in place. How will they change? What terms benefit you? What terms don't? Can you terminate on that particular issue if your terms perhaps don't benefit you? We talked about Privacy Shield. We talked about data. And remember, personal data is also an export issue. You are exporting people's data to the US and around the world. So we talked about Privacy Shield. The UK will become a third country as far as the EU is concerned for data. So that's another thing that is going to be an issue on the 1st of January, unless we can come to an agreement over the next 4 months. Looking at transfer of data to the US, make sure that the standard contractual clauses are in place with whoever is the data is being transferred to. And most importantly, any third party that you deal with, it isn't just about who you transfer the data to, it's about who they are transferring that data to as well. Be aware of separation issues like UK court judgments and whether they can be enforced in the EU after the 1st of January. Revisit all of your contracts, not just around export and import, but with regard to EU regulations, especially if you are warranting in your agreement with your buyer or seller as to who is responsible for what, and the fact that you will abide by EU regulations just in case you no longer can.
Brilliant. And to contact you, how they get in touch again?
To contact me, I'm on LinkedIn, Linda Bazant, or you can email me, linda@lindabazant.com, or my mobile 07957 422 069.
Fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Listen, it's been a great show. Really enjoyed it. And thank you very much for all the people that got involved as well with the program. It was interesting. Copyright, Privacy Shield, all over it. The moment you started talking about imports, exports, they all went, right, take your notes.
Everybody ran away.
No, they didn't run away. They were all taking notes. They were all taking notes. So there we go. Listen, it's been a fantastic program. Thank you very much indeed for joining me today. And listen, the best of luck on the training course as well. And I'll let you turn the studio off, turn the lights and the aircon off, and get out of there. Till I see you again, thank you very much for joining us. Until I see you again, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Business Connections Live. We'll be doing it all again next week. We're back again on Monday of next week, and it is Justin Roux. We're going to be looking at change within organizations. I had a conversation with him today, and he said, interestingly, a lot of companies think that it's imperative or it's essential that they do have change within their business. But do you know what he said? Sometimes there isn't any need for change because the company is actually getting it right. So maybe if you've been thinking, yeah, we need a big change, a big shake-up within the organization, we need to change our systems and we need to do all of that. Actually, there may not be a need for it. And what they do, they go in and they analyze what your business is doing, and they do it very quickly, and then they come back with suggestions on how you can grow your business or change your business if you have to. But somebody did say to me, transition change is all about when you transition, it's going from something to something else. And a proper transition is not being able to get back. And maybe that's what's going to happen at the end of this year. And in fact, that is what's going to happen at the end of this year. Things, they are a-changing. There is no going back. And on that bombshell, stay safe, look after yourself, and look out for that virus, won't you? But keep yourself well. Till next week, from me, Steve Hyland, and Linda Bazant, bye for now. Bye-bye.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.